Yeah, I think a lot of police officers they go through a lot of trauma, and I think the politics in Pakistan and the politics here in the United States are extremely similar. If you look at the divorce rate amongst police officers, it's extremely high.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is me, Uzair Hassan, and you are watching the all new episode of the Sapiens Experience podcast. In today's episode, we are going to have a guest जिनकी journey एक inspiration से कम नहीं रही है. So without any further delay, let's welcome our guest for the evening, Mr. Nabil Shike. Assalamu alaikum Nabil, how are you?
Walaikum salam, everybody. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How have you been so far?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Thank you for having us on this podcast, and I look forward to engaging in a nice conversation.
Thank you Nabil and thanks for being part of this podcast. And इस podcast के लिए हमें काफ़ी वेट करना पड़ा. आपकी नेक्स्ट रेस पे जाने से पहले we got hold of you. हमें पता नहीं है कि आगे आपसे कितना डिफ़िकल्ट होगा कम्युनिकेट करना, बट थैंक यू वंस अगेन. नबील, सबसे पहले तो फॉर आवर व्यूअर्स, बिकॉज वी हैव सम ऑफ आवर व्यूअर्स लिविंग इन ऑफ कोर्स यूएसए, लेकिन हमारे पास जो मेजर हमारी ऑडियंस है दे आर लिविंग इन पाकिस्तान, यूके एंड अदर पार्ट्स ऑफ द ग्लोब. So there's this one thing which I have noticed कि जो पाकिस्तानीज़ हैं when they are living abroad, तो उनके अंदर सबसे पहले तो जब वो एक सेल्फ एक्चुअलाइजेशन के स्टेज पे आ जाते हैं, so there's this one thing they are making their names as well. You have been one of them as well. तो थोड़ा सा ये बताओ कि वाई लॉ इन्फोर्समेंट, बिकॉज देयर आर मैनी पीपल आउट देयर जो कि जब मूव करते हैं उनका मेन होता है कि या तो वो कोई बिजनेस सेटअप करेंगे या वो कोई गैस स्टेशन बना के खुश हो जाते हैं, या इन सर्टेन एरियाज आई हैव ऑल्सो सीन कि वो कोई एंटरप्रेन्योर टाइप एक लेगेसी लेके चल रहे होते हैं. सो व्हाट केम इन योर माइंड कि आपने डिसाइड किया कि मुझे लॉ इन्फोर्समेंट की तरफ आना है?
Yeah, it's a very good question. The journey actually starts many years ago, right? Back when I was in high school. I grew up in a very rough side of Houston in A-Leaf at the time, where growing up we saw law enforcement do a bunch of things to especially minorities. So growing up, I didn't like police officers. And I was involved in an incident at school, and it was a deputy constable from the Precinct 5 constable's office that essentially helped change my life, and I got to see a different side of law enforcement. And so after I had got married, I was working in oil and gas, and I actually fell off of a tank about 100 feet, dislocated my shoulder. And at the same time, I had met at then Constable Victor Trevino, who was the constable in Harris County for Precinct 6. And we became good friends, and I talked to him about law enforcement, and decided to go to the police academy. And at first the family was like, no, it's too dangerous, and then I told them, well, I just fell off of a 100-foot tank and could have died falling off of a tank.
Okay, so this was my question as well to you, how you actually convinced your family, because the Desi household or the people like us, unke jo parents hote hain, so they are very spectacle about these things. They are very, they keep their kids very pampered. So did they allow you, or या आपको कोई एक special source लगानी पड़ी family को convince करने के लिए?
Family convince करने के लिए was, once I put it in perspective about me falling off of the tank, and I could have died falling off of the tank. And as Muslims, we believe that your death is already written, right? So
true.
If whether I was gonna die falling off of a tank, or if I'm gonna die as a police officer, if you're gonna die in your sleep, that's not in our hands. That's in the hands of Allah. And so when we started putting it into that perspective, it became easier for the family. And plus, public service runs in the family, runs in our bloodline, going all the way back to Pakistan, and the family members that I've had in government and everything in Pakistan.
Okay, Nabil. So tell us about your title, being the first Muslim police officer. इस टाइटल के बारे में थोड़ा सा बताओ, क्योंकि what I have seen कि after you becoming the constable, there were many people, not in USA, in other parts of like Europe as well, in some of the countries. In fact, I can name few as well, कि वो इस फील्ड में आए. यूजली हमें इस तरह लोग नज़र नहीं आते थे जो कि इन पोजीशंस के ऊपर थे. सो यू वांटेड दैट टाइटल, पहले से पता था तुम्हें कि आई एम एक्चुअली गोइंग टू बी द फर्स्ट मुस्लिम, या बाद में जब रिसर्च हुई तो तुमने देखा कि ये वाली चीज़ हो रही है?
When you looked at that race for constable, that journey also goes back many years prior to me running for that election. I got to see some of the systemic racism, not only that's in law enforcement, not only towards different ethnic groups, but I saw it towards Islam and towards Muslims and how some of the Muslims were being treated. Going to one of our masjids, and at the time, the constable that was elected at the time, me asking him, why don't I see any minorities on his command staff? And his response to me was, I haven't found any qualified minorities. While I was working as a police officer, it was after the Boston bombings. At the time, my little sister wore a hijab, and we were in a roll call setting, and there was a fellow deputy that started talking about what he would do when he approaches a vehicle and he knows the woman or the person to be Muslim. Okay. And he mentioned it being a female. So if she was wearing a hijab, he was going to unholster his gun and he was going to take it out because he didn't know if he was going to walk up to the car and she was going to blow him up. And at the time, I felt that was very racist because my baby sister wore a hijab, right? At times, she would come to my office and she has to pass through that patrol area where that guy patrols to come, let's say, bring me food or something. And so my mindset was, are you going to pull your gun out on my little sister because she's trying to bring your brother in law enforcement food because she's wearing a hijab? And so when I started seeing things like that actually happen in law enforcement, it's what kind of fueled my run to want to run for constable. We didn't know that we were going to be the first Muslim, to answer your question. But as we started the journey and we started doing research, and started the realization that, hey, we're going to be the first Muslim ever elected in this country into that position, and what it did to our community. And alhamdulillah, there was a lot of doubters in 2020. They didn't think we were going to be able to flip a Republican precinct at the time who was dominated by basically a 16-year regime, and then them giving it to their successor and us being able to come in and defeat them. And so, alhamdulillah, after our victory, you started seeing a change, not only here in our region, but all across the country, where you started seeing Muslims and Pakistanis and South Asians in general, start getting promoted in law enforcement to positions of power. Just in the Houston area, we promoted an assistant chief at the Houston Police Department. That happens to be Muslim. Out here in Fort Bend County, for the first time, we've helped get a captain appointed into the sheriff's office for the first time. You look at just deputies in general in Fort Bend, there wasn't many Muslims patrolling the streets in Fort Bend, even though Fort Bend County and my district at the time, my precinct at the time, was heavily populated by Muslims. And they didn't have any representation patrolling the streets.
Okay, but Nabil, there's a question over here कि what were some of the steps you took in order to convince the people in your district कि वो बिल्कुल एक साइड चेंज करें, इनफैक्ट एक पूरी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी चेंज करके रिपब्लिकन से हट के डेमोक्रेट्स को वोट करें? कौन से ऐसे स्टेप्स लिए थे?
I think it was just authenticity. Most politicians, they walk around, they say what they want to say to different groups, to satisfy those groups, where myself, whatever I'm going to say to one group, I'm going to say to another group.
Okay.
And I think that authenticity is what really helped catapult our campaign. And amongst a lot of the Muslims as well, I grew up in the masjids. I grew up in Houston. A lot of the uncles have seen me and watched me grow up as a child. And seeing the journey themselves. And so again, once the realization that, hey, we're going to elect the first Muslim into this seat
True.
across the country, I think that also fueled motivation, especially amongst the Muslim and Desi Republicans. Having Donald Trump on the ballot at the time also helped tremendously because of some of his outrageous policies he was throwing out. And so it just helped the campaign, I guess, entirely as a whole.
Acha, Nabil, you have mentioned some of the important points, but what were some of the lessons that you have learned in this journey? क्या ऐसी चीज़ें पता चली? Trust factor का बताओ कि the people who you were with at that time, you are still with them, or the people who supported you initially, they were in your journey throughout, or when you actually decided to move to another seat, वो लोग अभी साथ में हैं. Tell us about this entire thing.
Politics is a funny game, and that's literally how some of the elected officials and politicians look at it, as a game. In fact, when I can recall when I was the constable, I was told by a member of commissioner's court, Nabil, you got to learn to play the game.
Okay.
And my response to him was, I don't play games, right? We're if you're playing with anything, you're playing with people's lives, right? And so in law enforcement, we don't play with people's lives.
True.
And so having that understanding, that was something that I had to learn was there's a lot of deals that are made behind the scenes in government. Not everything is as what it appears to be. And it's a challenge, especially being the first Muslim. And being able to create the buzz that we were able to create, and then a lot of the envy and the jealousy that comes from even within our own party.
Okay.
It happens. And so when you look at...
You thought you always have to be ahead of your game in order to convince the people in your party? या तुम्हें लगता था कि अब मैं बन गया हूँ तो अब basically मुझे इतना कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है काम करने की?
I think, again, as... minorities in general, right? Minorities have to work twice as hard in order to be successful, I would say. But you throw in the fact that you're Muslim, you got to work 3-4 times as hard.
Okay.
And no matter, sometimes some of the things that we would do, somebody else can do something less than us, but they would get highlighted a lot more.
Absolutely.
And it's very unfortunate that we still live in that kind of society. To give you an example, October 7th, right? A lot of the elected officials, when I started speaking out against it, they were scared. They didn't want me to write a statement. They didn't want me to really get involved. Oh, you're just, the constable. What is the constable going to be able to do? And alhamdulillah, we took a leap of faith and, wrote a letter to President Joe Biden at the time demanding a ceasefire, one of the first in the country, definitely one of the first in our region. And it was very scary. Was told not to do it from my own political party. And we did it anyways because it was the right thing to do. And alhamdulillah, you started seeing other elected officials, and it garnered a lot of support. And, here we are almost 2 years later, and some of those elected officials still talk about it, but the majority of them don't talk about it no more. And I think, that also has to play because I'm not in that seat anymore. So they don't look at it like, okay, he doesn't have that strong of a voice. But inshallah, on March 3rd, they'll find out how strong of a voice we have.
Achha Nabil, let's talk about the difficult days of your job. We know that everyone knows absolutely कि जो law enforcement के लोग होते हैं, they have to sacrifice their lives as well. They have to sacrifice their personal time, the me time job के ऊपर भी. So was it difficult for you as well initially? Because I've seen कि you are quite out there as well. You have good friends, you hang out as well, you have a social life. So initially, was it difficult to maintain both?
Law enforcement is very unique because it's a 24-hour a day, 7-day profession.
True.
So you can get called in at any given time. So I have times where it does interfere with some of the social life. It interferes with your private life as well.
Does it affect your private life as well?
Oh, 100%. if you look at the divorce rate amongst police officers, it's extremely high. It's just the amount of time that you're away from the family. And so in the start of my law enforcement career, I would work 80, 100 hours. I mean, I didn't really want my ex-wife at the time to really work. So here I am working all these hours, working these side jobs, doing everything that I have to do because police officers, unfortunately, are underpaid in America for the job that we have to do. And so, that interferes a little bit. Running a campaign, definitely interferes, especially in the position that I was, running for, because now you have to be a little bit more cognitive on what socializing you're doing, right?
Acha Nabil, there's this very important question as well. What I have seen, there's a certain rise in suicides amongst police officers. Of course, I know कि बहुत ही एक tedious job भी है, लेकिन what do you think? What is the main reason कि जो officers are knowing the fact they are knowledgeable, they are literate as well, they are doing their duty. Of course, family life होती है, लेकिन इसके अलावा और कौन से ऐसे challenges हैं जिसकी वजह से जो suicide rate है amongst the police officers is increasing?
Yeah, I think a lot of police officers, they go through a lot of trauma, especially depending upon where you're working, where you're living. They deal with a lot of stuff while they're at work, and then they have to deal with stuff within the office, with their administration, within their command. Some officers will wear that burden, that stress when they come home, and then they resort to alcoholism. A lot of them will start resorting to drugs, just because
to have that mini getaway from the problems
they just start feeling that nobody's understanding them. They start dealing with things again while they're out on the street, when they're dealing with things with other supervision and with their commands, then going home and dealing with things within their own families. A lot of police officers have this alpha mentality where they do not want to talk to other police officers, where there are resources out there for them to be able to talk to. They just choose not to talk to them. And I think just the stresses and the burdens and some of the things that we encounter tend to lead to that suicide, unfortunately. I've encountered several different things that throughout my journey and throughout my career. I've had a 4-year-old child die in my arms. I've been shot at point blank range. Been in several fights. I've responded to several death calls and shootings. Rape cases with kids. And so for myself, how I deal with the trauma is the socializing.
Have you ever felt any kind of paranoia जब इन सारी situations से deal कर रहे होते हैं? Do you still think कि कुछ ऐसे incidents होते हैं, they remain with you and they still haunt you over time?
Oh, definitely. I had a 4-year-old child die in my arms on the first day of school. And having to watch that child die and, holding that child in my arms and having his blood throughout the entire day, because, I couldn't go home and actually take a shower at the time. I had to continue working. And you being able to, or having to control your emotions throughout the entire day because you're still working. There's still other citizens that you're going to be interacting with. In my opinion at the time, after going through a bunch of leadership, the agency should have let me off immediately. But I'm actually thankful that they didn't, because it allowed me to go to work and still be amongst my peers. And even though everybody knew that something had happened, they didn't know exactly what had happened because the news hadn't broke yet. But, those traumas, you'll carry them every day with you. So when you're responding to certain calls involving, let's say, a child, the worst is already going through your mind because you've already seen the worst. So I like to deal with it. Anytime I'm going through some of those stress, again, socializing, I like going to the gym. It helps I spend time with my kids, and so
Acha Nabil, how important is it to have that companionship, the loyalty of someone being with you? Of course, आप पब्लिक ऑफिस के लिए रन कर रहे हैं, पहले भी आप रन कर चुके हैं, तो कौन सी ऐसी चीज़ आपने उस वक्त फिगर आउट की थी जो आप सोच रहे हैं कि उसको इम्प्रूव किया जाए, या जो लोग आपके साथ पहले थे वो अभी भी हैं, या चेंज होते रहते हैं लोग?
you know, there's a very famous term. It's lonely at the top,
Hmm.
and I couldn't agree more with that term. People tend to only want to see how they can benefit from you. And so those that are genuinely loyal, that have unconditional love, I only have a few of those individuals. But one in particular, you know, I have a brother named Irtiza Rana that, you know, stood by me no matter what, the good, the bad. And that level of loyalty, I think, has inspired many others in politics out here in Fort Bend County when they started seeing that brotherhood, that unbreakable brotherhood. And I think that's what every politician truly wants. They want that true friend, that person that they can go and lean on for help and for advice.
No, absolutely. I can agree on that as well because I know him personally. And knowing the fact, I have seen your journey as well जब आप compete कर रहे थे, and how difficult is the situation at a time कि जब the competitor you are competing against is doing everything possible to win, and of course you are doing as well. लेकिन उस time पे the best support is someone who stood by you. It's not about what I've seen. It's not about the money कि कौन कितने पैसे दे रहा है, क्योंकि जिसने पैसे देने हैं वो दे के चला जाएगा. It's about the people who are on the ground with you, who are in your good and bad times, चाहे वो जिस भी सिचुएशन पे भी हो, कि उनको पता भी हो कि हो सकता है हम शायद इसको नहीं कर पाएँ या कर पाएँ, they are still with you. So this is, I guess, this is very phenomenal thing, the people who stood by someone.
Yeah, you know, it's a rarity in politics. It's a rarity.
It's
in
very
law
rare,
enforcement.
yeah.
You know, to have somebody that is truly genuine, that wants to see you successful, that looks at my success as their success, because they understand what me being successful does for our community. You know, you go back to when I was the constable prior to 2020, you didn't see all the events and all the stuff that you see out here in Fort Bend County. The Fort Bend Iftar, who brought the Fort Bend Iftar
Yes, you were actually
to Fort
you
Bend?
were one of the trendsetters for many of the things that happened
that
in
we
your
have,
county.
that we have here today. And because, you know, I was raised to always remain humble, you know, we don't like going around and gloating everything that we do.
Acha Nabil, you have been in politics as well, and you have been following Pakistani politics and American politics. Tell us some of the differences that you witness in American politics compared to Pakistani politics,
Some of the differences,
or similarities.
yeah. So again, I think the politics in Pakistan and the politics here in the United States are extremely similar.
Okay.
Pakistan, it's more in your face, whereas, and through my experience here, it's more behind the scenes on some of the things that are being done.
अच्छा, जिस तरह पाकिस्तान में कोई इलेक्टेड ऑफिशियल होता है, जब वो इलेक्शन जीत जाता है तो उसके साथ जो है ना लोगों का एक वो क्राउड आ जाता है, एक जमघट आ जाता है, तो यहाँ पे भी वैसे ही होता है.
It's going to be the same no matter what. I think people like following crowds. If you think of herding sheep,
Yeah.
right? Somebody that's herding sheep, all they have to do, you know, if you go to, very interesting, you know, when I was in Pakistan, I went to the mountains in Naran and Kalgan, and, you know, just watching some of the men, how they were herding the sheep, because you would see sheep going astray, and then they would get, I guess, one of them to start following, and then they all get back in line and they're all following and they're walking up a mountain. And so it's just very similar to people, right? When you have somebody that's successful, you know, that's in a position of power, somebody that has a lot of wealth or influence, it's like some people just follow just to follow, because, you know, they want to be relevant, they want to be a part of whatever is going on. But you also have people that are genuinely inspired by you. that want to see you successful, that want to be a part of that journey with you. And then you also have those others that just are there just for the show.
True. अच्छा Nabil, have you ever experienced something similar with you over here जहाँ पे आपको criticism face करना पड़ रहा हो? Because criticism is part of politics as well. But sometimes people take it positively as well. लेकिन जब तुम्हें criticism मिला लोगों से या social media पे, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, criticism, I think to be an effective leader, you have to be able to take criticism.
Okay.
Right. Whether
It
it's
doesn't
good,
affect you.
whether it's good criticism or bad criticism. And as a leader, you have to be able to stand on your values and your principles. I can give you some examples of some times that I was criticized. I was criticized. I received threats when I stood for House Bill 88, which was the George Floyd Act. We have more than 100,000 police officers in Texas. And at the time, State Representative Ron Reynolds was trying to introduce this bill, which was known as the George Floyd Act. And those that remember what happened with the horrific things that have happened with George Floyd, that was all over the news and how it affected law enforcement. So when I got to read the bill and was asked if I can, come and help be a part of that bill, and, I agreed. Out of 100,000 police officers, I was the only police officer in the state of Texas that went down to the state capitol to help testify on that bill.
Okay.
Some of the media attention that we received from it, I started receiving emails saying, Constable, what are you doing? But you look at the positive that came out of that bill. Even though the bill was kind of squashed, they were able to take some things out of that bill. And here in the state of Texas, it is now police officers cannot choke you, right? That's banned now here in the state of Texas. So that was something that we pushed for every police officer to have the duty to intervene. So if you see another officer exceeding their scope of their duties, you now have a duty to intervene. These are all great things for society. They're great things for law enforcement. But I was criticized. But you look at the actual criticism, I took the criticism, right? Because I knew it was something that was going to benefit society overall. And it has. Another side that I talked about earlier was my strong support for Palestine. Again, Democrats, Republicans, all the politicians, nobody really wanted to go out and speak for our brothers and sisters in Palestine. And so I was criticized very heavily from members of my own party until they started seeing here in Fort Bend County just how much it was affecting our constituents. And only then is when they started seeing how the response that we were receiving from our community is when they started finally speaking out about it. So I was criticized at first, and then alhamdulillah, they started seeing, I guess, the light at the end of the tunnel and saying, hey, this was actually something beneficial.
Acha Nabil, tell us about your transition अब जो होने जा रही है from being a constable to a county judge. इसके पीछे क्या साइंस थी and who motivated you this time कि अब आप मुझे जो है एक step up करना है अपना.
So the county judge race, for those that know what happened in the 2024 election, with a lot of the race baiting from the current county judge and at the time the commissioner for Precinct 3 candidate, I was one of their victims in that little scandal that they had going on, allegedly.
Okay.
And so it definitely hurt us a little bit in our race. And then the challenges that I had to go through as the constable. And at the time, we had the control over Commissioner's Court. You had the 3 Democrats, and I was always told by the county judge at the time that, oh, you have to get approval from one particular commissioner, which was false the entire time because we had the votes already on Commissioner's Court. If you have 3 Democrats, you had your fellow Democrat asking for positions for funding or, the different things. We didn't ask for much. It was little bitty things that we would ask for to help benefit the community. Understanding later on that the current county judge played an integral part of blocking some of the things that we were trying to do to help our community.
Okay.
You see a lot of the division that the county judge had created through that entire scandal, and how our community was so divided and broken. And so I looked at it as an opportunity to help unite our community and bring us back together. Unfortunately, the South Asian community here in Fort Bend County had been scarred. And so I talked to my family, I talked to my campaign team, some of the pain that my parents had to endure at the polling locations because of some of that race baiting that they were doing, and the things that my parents had to hear, the pain that they had to go through.
True.
All helped fuel that fire for me to want to run for county judge. Understanding that it is the experience that I've had as the constable, and understanding the need of public safety, that in order for, governments, one of their primary roles is the health and safety and the protection of its citizens. And having that strong background in law enforcement, having that background, in law, having that background in business, I think, alhamdulillah, I would be extremely successful as our county judge, because the county judge is essentially the CEO of the county, manages over $700 million, is over traffic mobility and traffic control and the development and emergency management, all things that I have experience in and that we've excelled in. And you can go and look at the track record and see yourself what we have done in the course of 4 years, that it takes other individuals many, many years longer to be able to accomplish. And so I wouldn't have decided to run for the position if I didn't think we can win. And inshallah, we will win this race.
Absolutely. This is something very good that you are thinking about all these points. अच्छा, इसके साथ एक चीज़ यहाँ पे बहुत important, it's a lesson for many people as well. Sometimes when you are contesting for these elections, you might hear certain stories about yourselves, you might hear different kind of criticism as well, and you have to face those people too. So tell us, how do you feel when you face such kind of people? And this is in fact something for our viewers as well who are listening and watching us abhi is time pe, कि how do you see them, बात किस तरह करते हो उनसे, knowing the fact that you have heard what they have said so far, you have heard maybe you have seen their messages, you might have heard their voice notes, and there are many people who you trust who brings out this information to you as well, कि these were certain people who were saying these things about you, and you have to act calm in front of them, you cannot react, knowing the fact that what they have done. किस तरह मैनेज करते हो इस सारी सिचुएशन को ताकि ये लोग भी सीखें?
I think you should always have courage and be kind, no matter what. My life journey is a journey that we could talk about on another episode, right?
Of course.
Because I went through a lot as a child, and watching my father at the time was a very prominent Muslim, very prominent Pakistani here in the Houston area. And as a child, watching some people turn against him from our own community and praying for his downfall, and some of the people that have actually hurt him. And my dad also coming up to me when I got into politics and saying, Beta, be careful from these people, be careful from this person. You can never trust this person. And I wanted to show everybody the son that he raised, right?
True.
And so I treated everybody with kindness. Still today, there's a lot of people that will say one thing to your face and turn around and say another thing, and they tend to forget that Houston, we may be a city of over 6 million people or so in the metroplex, but it's still a very small city, right? It's going to get back to you.
Absolutely.
Um,
And people
so
don't realize this. I often say to people कि जब कोई इस तरह की बात कर रहा होता है, so they might be very excited or they might be interested in that gossip. But if someone is telling something about someone to you, then they are going to say about you to someone else as well. तो अगर आप इस चीज़ को भी realize कर लें, you are going to stop taking those gossips as well. Sometimes people take it just for entertainment.
I think you'll learn what noise to block out. A lot of them are distractions. So there's a saying, when you're chosen by Allah, when you're chosen by God, you're also favored by Shaitan, right? Because Shaitan, his job is to try to break you, right? And so it's better to just block out some of that noise, right? Don't get baited into some of the things that Shaitan is going to want you to do, right? To go and have confrontational interactions with some of those people. Sometimes it's best to just look at them, let them know that what they are
True.
saying, and shake their hand, and just keep it moving, right? We have an objective, we have a goal. If I sit back and I just think about some of the things that people are going to say, is it not going to distract me from my goal? It is going to distract me from my goal. So you learn how to block out a lot of noise. I went through a divorce that was publicized all over television, and nothing happened, right? Literally nothing happened, but they publicized it on TV, and it's because I'm Muslim, and that's how I look at it. You had two other very prominent law enforcement officers that went through a divorce, but nobody knows about it, right?
True.
Nobody knows about it. And, out of their respect, I won't mention their names, but nobody knows about it. But why does everybody know about Nabil Shike's divorce, right? They don't know about this individual's divorce, who is a current sitting constable. They don't know about this person's issues in his family that he had going on. That is one of the former constables. And so that's why, I say it's a lot. You gotta work a lot harder being Muslim.
True.
And so as Muslim, when I was wearing the stars as the constable, I would tell everybody it was very heavy. But I just didn't represent at the time, the 250,000 people of Precinct 3. And, as county judge, I'm not just representing the nearly 900,000 residents of Fort Bend County. I represent the nearly 2 billion Muslims all around the world. And so I'm not perfect, but I wear that burden proudly.
Your good act might not be celebrated, but कोई एक खराब act या एक थोड़ा सा कम अच्छा है जो वो ज़्यादा discuss होगा या वो ज़्यादा notice में आएगा. You are absolutely right.
You can do 1,000 good things,
Yeah.
and they can go unnoticed. A lot of politicians, they like going around taking pictures, so to show everybody, oh, look what I've done, or look at this, look at that. When they're doing charity work, humanitarian work, oh yeah, let's make sure we get pictures of us, giving this bag of food out. But in Islam, Allah has commanded us, when you give with one hand, your other hand shouldn't see it.
True.
Right? And so we've taken a different approach, an approach of unity, an approach of love, and just doing everything out of being genuine in everything that we do. I don't write speeches. If you've ever seen me give a speech, I don't write them. They all come straight from the heart. I've been on stage and I've cried on stage, talking about issues that not only affect me, but are affecting our constituents. Poured my heart out in masjids, right, at schools,
because authenticity is really what people I think want to see today in their leaders. We have Brother Mamdani in New York, and inshallah he becomes our next mayor in New York City, and being the first Muslim in New York mayor right in New York, and what that does for our community. And if you look at his campaign, he's authentic, right? Why are people drawn to him? He's authentic. Myself, I wear, suits like this. In the political realm, everybody's like, oh no, you should be in a black or brown or a blue suit or a gray suit. But all of them are wearing black, brown, blue, gray, right? I want to be different. Yeah, I want to stand out. This is who I am. Why am I going to act like somebody that I'm not? Right, just to please a certain group of people. And when you are acting as someone else, you cannot do it for long. And वो लोगों को लगना शुरू हो जाएगा कि you are faking it as well. So this is a very good thing that you have mentioned कि be who you are actually. If you are going to become someone else, you are going to be in that middle area जहाँ पे आप वो भी नहीं बन सकते और अपनी identity जो आप already खो चुके हैं. Thank you so much, Ravi, for being part of this podcast. It was a pleasure having you. And this is something very special as well कि you have mentioned about the things कि knowing the fact कि आपके लिए लोग कितनी बुराइयां हैं, कितनी बुरी चीज़ें सोच भी रहे हो, and you have to act calm. You don't have to react on everything that you hear or see.
Uzairbhai, thank you again
Thank you for being here.
for having me on this podcast. It was a lot of fun, but I do want to end with just two things, if that's okay with you. First, for all of the viewers, they should all remember that elections have consequences and elections matter. And two, there's a lot of terrible things that are going around the world right now. We're watching a genocide unfold right before our eyes. We're watching kids getting bombed and kids getting starved. And so I think it's time for all of us to stand together as humans, right? And demand accountability from your politicians.
True.
Don't just go and vote based off of what they're going to be able to do for you, right? What are they going to do for you and your neighbor, right? We all got to live in this society together, and so, I want to, just end with a small moment of silence and a prayer for those that are suffering around the world, because it's not right, and I wanted to use some of this platform to be able to speak for them. And inshallah, one day Palestine will be free. And inshallah, one day we'll live in a society where we have no more war, where we focus on people, where we focus on feeding humanity and making sure that everybody has the right to basic health care and education and the basic right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, not just here in America, but all around the world. So, Uzairbhai, again, I thank you for giving me that opportunity to be able to just say that. So
thank you. Thank you once again. And with that, this is me, Uzair Hassan, signing off from the Sapiens Experience podcast. If you have any questions, do let us know and do follow Nabil Shike on all social media platforms. I'll see you in another podcast. Till then, take care.